Welcome to Changing Suits. We're your hosts, Bal
and Taj, discussing the latest news, views, and general life for us Western Asians.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Hi, welcome to Changing Suits. My name's Bal.
And my name's Taj.
This week, I wanted to explain a bit about why we decided to start up Changing Suits. Now, one of the reasons me and Taj found that it was so important that we discuss some of the topics that we do discuss is so that we can raise awareness to things that perhaps were going on in our lives, but just we weren't conscious of them. And if someone does point them out, then you'll be like, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Now, one of those subjects is something that is close to all of our hearts, and that's racism. Now, we've discussed racism previously on the podcast, but we really wanted to bring to light as to what impact racism has on people's lives, on our lives as a community. So, on today's podcast, we've got Sukhdev Reel, who was the mother of Ricky Reel. So, Sukhdev, could you give us a bit of an introduction about yourself?
My name is Sukhdev Reel, and I'm Ricky Reel's mother. Ricky, who went to Kingston on in October 1997 with some Asian friends to a party and never returned home.
Before we go into, because obviously a large part of this podcast is going to be looking at the police's response, which I know is something that you're so passionate about talking about. Can I ask, what is your introduction? What's your history? When did you come to the UK? And what did you do here in the UK? How many kids have you got? Could you maybe explain your background?
Okay, I was born and brought up in Nairobi, Kenya, and I came to UK in 1965. Studied here, worked here, supported myself while parents were back in Nairobi, and got married, had 4 kids. And my last job was I was working as a homeless persons officer with a local authority. And I did 1 year as a paralegal in a solicitor's firm as well.
So you are someone that's understands the Eastern way of life. You've come here and you've made a life for yourself. You brought up your family. You've worked hard for everything you've got.
Yeah.
How did you find, firstly, when you came to the UK, how did you find it yourself? What was your outlook on when you came to the UK?
Well, I went to a school where there were people of every color, every faith. So, we accepted people as they were. There was no, we never looked at somebody's his history of, color or faith or what religion they belonged to or what their background was. And the word racism, I discovered it when I came to UK. That was my first introduction to racism.
How did you discover the word racism in the UK? What had
Well,
changed?
well, I saw people calling names one, from um, like from one class to another, and then hearing about all those racist attacks, and then seeing them as well later on in my life. But I thought, racism is there. Maybe I should have involved with this earlier. But like most people, it took my own tragedy to discover how it hurts and what racism does. And my own perception is when racism rears its ugly head, it leaves devastation behind. It leaves mothers like me with empty arms.
I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head by we're so busy in our own lives, but until a tragedy, in this case it was, happens, you don't have time for it almost.
The other thing is, I mean, it's been interesting because we've spoken to other guests about racism and their perspective on it. But what you said earlier is we've come to the UK, we've come here to work hard. And I know this sounds like one of those things. It's we don't want to cause trouble, so we don't say anything.
Yes, I think that's how one of the things we have been brought up by our parents. And I've mentioned that in the book as well, that the parents said, You are here, you are here to work. Don't hold hopes for other people to give you something. If you want something, my father always said, if you want something, work for it. Yeah, it's not going to fall from the sky in your lap. If you want something, go out and work. And that's what we have been doing all along. And we've never relied on any benefits. And I remember, when I was here, working in the morning and going to the college in the evening. And that was to just educate myself, come to an understanding that understanding that if I want to go further in the field, then I had to really educate myself. I did not rely on anyone, not even my parents as well. So, I made a future for myself. And this is what my children did. And that's how we were brought up. And I've always said that, do not rely on anyone. If you want to do something, stand up, do it.
And that's it. It's still ingrained in us that it's important to work hard and make your own money and not depend on anyone else.
I think if you look at most of the businesses and most of the house owners, most of the people in our community, they have their own houses, they have their own businesses, because that is the teaching that has been ingrained into us, that we have to support ourselves rather than relying on other people.
So, how does it make you feel, or how did it make you feel when you were growing up and you were hearing racist remarks? And I mean, it was things like, and we always hear it on TV when we talk about racism. If you've come here, you've worked hard. How did it make you feel at that point when you were hearing these things?
Well, I it makes me angry because we have come here, we have contributed to the country. So we are not saying, give us benefits or give us housing or give us, anything else. We have worked hard for it. So in fact, we are, contributing towards this country rather than taking it away from it. And when you hear remarks like people go to your own country, so where is my country? I've been here since 67 and I'm a British citizen. So where do I go?
Well, that's it, isn't it? We're almost in the lost world, you could say. If we went back home, that isn't home for us because we weren't brought up there, and everything's so different for us there.
Yeah,
We've
yeah,
come to this country, we've made our lives here, and this is home for us.
yeah. That's the only home I know.
Can you talk us through? So we're just going to move on in your journey. Can you tell us a bit about Ricky and his personality?
Well, Ricky was a son any mother would be proud of. His eyes were always twinkling, and he went out of his way to help people. And even, the school reports that was there, which are in the book, as teachers have said, that when other people went out during lunchtime, he stayed behind and helped people with the projects. And he helped people. My next door neighbor used to make musical boxes for the carnival, and they were too heavy for one person to carry. And he was always there carrying those boxes to load in the car. And then after his death, my one of my neighbors, a few houses away, came to my house, and she was sobbing, and I didn't understand. I said, lots of people were coming and going out of my house, and she said to me, you know what? She said, you lost someone really generous. And she said, he was helping me. I said, why? How? And Ricky used to go out for a run every morning, and that lady used to work nights and come home with shopping and so on. And she said, Ricky, whenever he saw me, he used to run over me and say, hi, auntie, you can't carry those bags. I'll carry it for you. So she said, did you realize he was carrying my shopping for me?
Oh, so you didn't know this? So he didn't come home and say, "Mum, I done this for an
That
auntie."
was the good thing about him. He never boasted, and all
Humble.
the time, yeah, and very, very humble. And like all the school children he had been helping, I didn't know. It was the teachers who told me that, did you realize that your son, instead of playing, he was doing this? And then also, when they had to go for a work experience, all of his friends went to companies and other places, sort of cushy jobs and everything. And he chose a hospital to work as a porter for a week. And I said to him, I said, Ricky, this is hard work. You'll be pushing trolleys. He said, but mom, that's where real people live. He said, that's how you learn how real people are and how to communicate. And he used to send money out of his the jobs he did in between his holidays or weekend jobs to charity. I didn't know that. I discovered all of that he
Wow.
was doing it. Yeah, and Saturdays and Sundays because my eldest daughter, I had to passed her driving exam third time, and Ricky, younger than her, passed it first time. So
Oh, that must have been trouble in the household then.
and he used to take, to a library and all that. So all the kids used to jump in the car and he used to drive them to the library and telling them exactly what time to come back. Otherwise he's going to leave them there.
Oh, so he was almost like a parent figure for them, picking
This
them
is
up
it.
and then.
And Fridays were reserved him and me going shopping to supermarket, him pulling the trolley.
Oh
And
dear, no one enjoys those supermarket trips with
no,
mum.
I hated it. And I also remember one day I was pretty ill and he took me to the hospital because my husband was working late. And he drove me to the hospital. And you know what hospitals are like? Ages you wait there. And I said to him, I said, Ricky, please go home because he's got exams the next day. And I remember his eyes filling up with tears. And he said to me, no, mom. He said, I'm staying here with you. I'm not leaving you. He said, I can always do exams the next day, but I can't get another mom like you.
Oh God,
That
that's
was
so
his,
lovely.
yeah, yeah. And then one day him and my husband were digging the garden because we wanted a new patio. And they were both digging. And then I think they were tired. They decided to take a break. And me, as impatient, because I want everything done here and now.
Of course, like most mothers do.
What are you doing? Go back, carry on.
Like there's no tomorrow. So I pick up this and I started digging the garden. As soon as I picked it up, he came running over and he said to me, that's not your job. He said, it's too heavy for you.
But
I said,
Sukhdev, can I say that was a good move because you knew that he'd do that. You're like, if I start pretending to dig, he'll come.
so and the good and he came running. My husband was sitting there, and he came running. He said, you can't do that, it's too heavy for you. I said, look, I can do it. And he said no. And then I said that he carried on. And then when he was sitting down after he finished it, I saw him with a wet towel on his hands. And I said to him, I said, what happened? And I looked at his hands, they were all covered with blisters.
Oh God,
And
yeah.
I had, I felt so sorry. And I just had tears in my eyes. And I said, Ricky, you should have stopped. You shouldn't have done it. And he said as a way to get me away from it, he
Yeah.
just started laughing. I said, you're talking about my hands. Go and look at look at my dad's hands. They're even worse than his.
Oh
So it
God,
always,
wow. So they worked very hard to do it then.
yeah, they always worked as a team. He was very close to my husband. My husband and him were like friends rather than a father and a son. Everything they used to share.
Do you know when I actually said, tell us about his personality? I looked in the screen and you smiled. And the stories that you've just told, you're laughing in them. And
Yeah, good memories.
the reason I want to highlight this is because obviously we will be talking about what happened um, in '97, but the impact that his life had, whether his mother knew it or not, was to the neighbours, to the charities that he helped, to the job places that he had, to the friends he had, but obviously most of all to his parents.
Yeah,
And that's something I suppose other people don't realize the impact one person has on so many other people.
yeah, yeah. This is it.
And tell me, in '97, so as we come to that tragic year for you, how old was he in that year?
20. He was only 20 years old.
Just 20. Okay.
Yeah.
And he was at university. He'd gone to Kingston University. And what degree was he doing over at Kingston
No,
University?
he had he had a 3-year degree. He done 2 years,
Yeah.
and this year in '97 was a work placement with a big computer company in London,
Okay.
and he was studying computer science and sociology. And yeah, he went out with Asian friends and said he'd come back. They were supposed to go to Brunel University because that's where he had studied.
Mm,
And then on the way, they decided to go to Kingston instead because they had a gig night or something about Diwali.
mm.
So they decided to go there. He told me he'd be home by 1. And with Ricky, he was very conscious of the time. And if he says 1, he would be home by 5 to 1.
Mm.
And when he didn't return at 1, I knew there was something wrong. It was just, call it a mother's instinct. It was there.
And what was, how did you first hear of the tragedy?
This is so ironic how I heard about it, because I spent the whole night ringing the hospitals thinking, maybe they were involved in a road traffic accident. Maybe he's lying somewhere injured on the road, or maybe he's lying in a hospital. And then I phoned, I wasn't getting anywhere. And they were saying no casualty reported or whatever. And then I remember ringing the Brunel University and seeing if there was any fights there in the uni. And the security officer said, no, there was a gig, but nothing. And then I asked him if he could locate one of Ricky's friends. And he did locate someone. He said he'll find it. He'll locate someone who wasn't with them, but who knew Ricky and
Yeah.
had phone numbers of Ricky's friends. And during that time, before ringing the security office, I had phoned the police as well, my local police station, and asked them to come. To be bluntly told that because Ricky was over the age of 18, their missing persons policy state that they would have to wait for first 24 hours. If he doesn't return, then I need to contact them again. I was pleading with them that Ricky wasn't like that. Ricky had never gone missing. He wasn't very streetwise because he hardly went out anywhere. And so the police said to me, no, it's that, and I kept on really pleading. And then she said to me, well, all right, I'll send a police officer over. And I had phoned my brother as well to come over because he was very close to Ricky. And we were, in pieces, really. We wanted someone to be with us. And so when the police officer didn't come, and I was sitting near the window,
So they
and
promised that they would come, but they didn't arrive.
they didn't come. Yeah. And so I rang the police station again, and I was told that the officer, the officer at the office started shouting at me, saying they did send the officer. I had refused to open the door,
What?
whereas I was sitting in the near the door, near the window, and I could see everybody coming in and out of my house. And I said, look, I'm not telling lies. I'm sitting here waiting for the police officer.
Can I ask you on that point? Because sometimes, even now, you do always you come across. If my parents were to phone a certain service, for example, a GP practice, and the other person wasn't Asian, they weren't of another culture apart from being white, they find it really hard even booking appointments. To the
Yeah,
point where if I phone straight after, I will get that appointment booked.
yeah.
That's how I look at it from my perspective, even now. Do you think that was the case, or am I already reading too much into this?
No,
Into
I will
this?
come back later to that because
Okay,
I will show you the attitude.
okay.
So she started shouting and screaming at me, the officer,
Mm.
saying that I was wasting police resources, and how dare I not open the door. And when I said to her that nobody turned up, after that there was a knock on my door. I don't know whether she sent another one or what, and he said to me he was given the wrong address.
Ah,
So I
okay,
didn't give the address. It was the police officer. Yeah.
okay.
So anyway, he came over and he said to me about the missing persons guidelines again, saying, I'm not taking any statement from you. You would have to wait for 24 hours. I said to him, go and look at Ricky's room. His passes, all the paperwork is there for the conference next morning. And I told him, why can't he ring the university to speak to the security officer? Because under the Data Protection Act, he's not allowed to give me any information, but he will give that information to the police. So he said, okay. So he spoke to the security guard who said, yes, we located one of Ricky's friends and he wants to talk to the police officer. So the friend gave Ricky's friend's phone number to the police officer. The police officer then phones Ricky's friends who were with him that night. And the police officer was told that there was a racist attack on them. And then he tells me that the group was involved in a racist attack. So the police officer knew about a racist attack
Mm.
before me. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So where is the logic when four people, four friends go out together? There is a racist attack. Three come back. One's missing, and he still refused to take a statement.
He's at that point
No,
still didn't take a
no,
statement. Wow.
no, no. He didn't take a statement. He said wait for 24 hours.
And what was his reason? Still because of the age.
He
That was
still,
the reason.
yeah, he still stuck to his policies. He had no concern that Ricky was missing. I mean, even a child knows that four people go together, attack happens, three come back. Where is the fourth one? Why is he missing?
At this point, did you have contact with the friends, or did you know where the friends were? Because they had
No,
come
no,
back.
no,
You
no.
said,
No, the police officer spoke to them and
okay,
then gave us the number. So we asked the friends to come to our house. Where is Ricky? And
yeah,
they said because they were talking about going to the nightclub, and Ricky kept on saying that he was going to go home because he had an early appointment with the Microsoft conference. So they thought they thought that Ricky had caught a bus and come home. Yeah, but Ricky's mobile and jacket were in their car. So we asked them to come over, and my husband and my brother. This is the interesting part. So my husband and my brother went to Kingston police station because Axrid was saying the incident happened in Kingston. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
So they went to Kingston with the boys who were out that night with Ricky. The boys first showed the area where they were walking around. They retraced their steps and then went to Kingston police station.
Can I
So
just ask, just before, because this is the fact that the four friends had gone through this racist attack. What was the racist attack? Was it verbal? Was it physical? What had happened in that attack?
it started with oil packets go home,
Mm.
Okay.
and then a physical attack
Okay. So it was physical between the four
as
of
well
them.
as verbal.
And
Yeah, yeah. The
okay.
word itself is defined as a racist attack anyway because
Yeah, of
there's an
course.
element of racism in it.
Yep.
And so we went to Kingston with the boys, the victims of the attack, to
Mm.
Yep.
report the incident to the police. Yeah. And the police there said, you have to wait for 24 hours. And the victims were saying we were attacked.
How does that doesn't even make sense, does it? There's an attack that have happened, and they have to wait 24 hours.
To come back to report Ricky missing. They totally disregarded the racial attack.
They didn't take the statement for the fact that there was a
Nothing,
racist attack.
nothing,
Oh,
nothing.
wow. Okay.
And then they said to us, two boys, my husband and my brother at Kingston Police Station, saying, the boys were saying, look, we've been subjected to a racist attack and we've been attacked, the jaws. And the police officer there said, we had to come back. We have after 24 hours if Ricky is still missing.
Did you ask why they weren't taking a report or a statement for the fact that there was a racist attack?
They totally ignored it. They totally ignored it. And then I can tell you why. And then they turned around and he said, the police officer said, well, your son may have decided to run away and you're not aware of it. And then he said, you Asians are always arranging marriages for your children.
Where did that even come from? Because there's a racist attack happening, and this all of a sudden turns about marriages. Crazy, isn't it?
So he said, as you Asians are arranging marriages for your children, he may have decided to run away from an arranged marriage. And then he winked at my husband and he said, well, you never know, your son may be gay. And
Where would these have presumptions come from? Was there anything that you had said that would have thought that they would have thought it was down to an arranged marriage or anything like that? Or did he just pluck this idea out of the thin air?
we went to report a missing person.
Yeah.
That's all we were doing.
Mm,
And the boys were there to say we are concerned for our friend who hasn't come back and we were subjected to racist attack.
that's crazy.
So
So
you're having almost a second racism going on there. They've had the first lot, and they've gone to somewhere where they think is a safe place to go, and they're subjected to this.
yeah.
Wow, words. I think me and Bal are just shocked.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, and then what happened from there?
Well, we knew that the two police stations have ignored us, that they weren't going to do anything. So we, for a week, we used to get up early in the morning. We hardly slept or ate anything. We used to get up early in the morning. We printed our own posters. Friends helped. We used to go to Kingston, just hand out leaflets, talk to people, found witnesses, and jumped into bins. My husband, I remember jumping into those industrial bins, going through all the rubbish to see if somebody had hurt Ricky. Ricky was lying there.
If they had said 24 hours, and obviously you went back after 24 hours because, they hadn't done anything, what had they said at that 24-hour period then? When you had,
Nothing.
did they not take a statement to say, actually, now this is a missing persons
No,
report?
no. So we were doing that, yeah.
Mm.
We were jumping into late night buses with the posters saying, "Have you seen this person?" And there were a lot of old buildings with the floorboards missing, big holes in the floorboards. We used to hang on to one another like forming a human chain, go inside those buildings to see if Ricky was lying there. We used to go to restaurants, shops. And on the second day, we located CCTV cameras ourselves, where Ricky is seen, where his friends are seen. The police weren't doing this.
So throughout this whole period, the police had no contact with you. They came back with nothing.
They, I think, this on the third or the fourth day, a van pulled up outside the house, and a few police officers jumped, and some took my husband to the garage. They wanted to check a garage, and the others started searching a house. And I just told the officers, I said, when you searched the whole house, I said, you missed something. I said, there's a ladder outside. Maybe you could go and check the loft as well. So are you suggesting that I murdered my own son, or am I hiding my own son?
Hmm.
So then I think the third day, I think it was, a police officer came to a house and he said, I have been appointed a consultant, but I have to go away for a few days, and somebody else will take over. And that's, they were, because we used to be out in Kingston anyway, me, my husband, and a few of our friends, and Southall Monitoring Group, my MP, Mr. John McDonnell, and relatives. So we used to go there, and some of, it was not, it was really heartening to see people of Kingston or people traveling, because whoever heard, going around at night time with torches in their hands trying to find Ricky.
So the community response was
Yeah,
so helpful in
yeah,
this really
yeah,
hard period,
yeah,
which is so
yeah,
good to hear that you had
yeah,
that support.
yeah. And I think the community, more than that, they were angry. They were saying, why are you searching for your son when the police is employed to do this job?
Mm.
Yeah, it wasn't us, it was the community asking. And so we said, well, I mean, I'm just a mom. I'm not trained to do this work,
Hmm.
but I had to do it because I wanted to find my son.
Yeah.
So I was more or less, I had no option to find my son. And then this was um, all the witnesses we found, all the cameras we found, that was highlighted in the court at the inquest. The witnesses who came in, he said, the family found us first. The police contacted them, some of them 18 months later.
Okay, so you're looking for Ricky, and then how long did it take before the police did actually start taking some firm action, not just coming around and saying, "Oh, I'm going to pass it on to another consultant"? At what point did they start actively looking for him?
They didn't. They never did.
Okay.
So what happened was on the 21st of October, I mean, we had a liaison officer come to our house saying um, they may do something, and she wanted to get the receipt because Ricky was wearing a brand new shirt that day. She came in, she said, to get the receipt so she could buy a matching shirt to do some press release or something. And then I went out on the 21st of October to meet Suresh because we were going to do a press release, our own. And I had left my children at home. I always left my children at home. to go and search for Ricky because they were too traumatized. And I thought it wasn't nice to drag my children 16, 17 hours on the street.
Mm.
And so while I was out with Suresh, Suresh had a phone call to say, keep Mrs. Reel there. And then the police officer came and he said, we discovered your son's body at the bottom of the river. I don't remember much because I just collapsed in his office. And my husband pulled me from under the table. And all the way down there, I was thinking, how was I going to break this news to my children? Because I have been promising him I will bring Ricky back. And anyway, I rang my house and my daughter picked it up and she said, the police officers are here. 2 police officers are here in the house. I had to, every moment, everything I did, I had contacted them. I used to contact the police and tell them that's what I'm doing. Even to retreat. On the second day, when I phoned them to say, are you investigating? How is the investigation going? I was told very bluntly by Kingston Police that investigation has stopped. This is 48 hours after he had gone missing. He said the investigation has stopped because we don't have resources to carry out the investigation. Okay, my son's missing. 48 hours later, they never did the investigation anyway, but to be told after 48 hours, we don't have resources, right? Anyway, so on the 21st of October, so I phoned my daughter and said, hi, I just said that. And she said to me, Mommy, 2 police officers are in the house. I said, okay. And the phone went dead. I tried ringing, phone was still dead. And Suresh tried ringing, phone was still dead. So we came home. And when we came home, I found my daughter sitting on the stairs looking really ill. And she had a puffer in her hand. She's asthmatic. And when I entered, I was told that I found the 2 police officers standing in my sitting room. I was told that the police told my daughter while she was on the phone to me to put the phone down. And my daughter said, no, I'm talking to my mom. So the police officer went there and pulled the socket out of the wall. And then she told my children, bearing in mind there was 11-year-old son there, that we discovered your brother's body from the bottom of the river.
They told the children without you being there.
Yeah, 11-year-old as well. So my daughter had an asthma attack. She stood in front of the police officers. That's how she described me. She said she stood in front of the police officers, waving her arms to get her attention because she wanted them to go to her bedroom and get her inhaler. They didn't. They carried on talking, laughing. So she said to me, Mom, I had to crawl like a dog on the stairs to get her inhaler. My 11-year-old son turned into a stone. He wasn't blinking. He wasn't doing anything. He was just standing there like a stone. So when I went home, I found the other daughter with a tray with some glasses of water on it, and she just kept on wandering around in the room with those glasses because she didn't know what else to do. And I tried to touch my son. I tried to go near my son. He just flinched, but he wasn't looking at anything. He was just standing there, not moving. His eyes were on the 2 police officers. So I told the police officers to get out of my house. I said, thank you very much. You caused a lot of damage. Just get out of my house now.
What did the police officers say when you obviously came into the house?
I didn't, when I saw what they've done, I just told them to get out of my house.
They didn't explain to you. Could you just tell from how the children were that they had already broken the news to them? Or did they say we've
The children
broken
were
the news?
traumatized. They weren't my children there.
Yeah.
There was like somebody else's there, sitting there.
So at that point you knew that they had already broken the news to them.
Yeah, when I went in, I saw them and I knew there was something wrong. And then my daughter told me this. She said, look, Mom, she said, I couldn't breathe. I just could not breathe. She could have died that day as well. So on the 21st of October, when the body was found, the chief officer who was investigating the case was at the river, and there were press there. And when Ricky's body was discovered, the journalist went over and asked the chief officer, who turned around and he said, accidental death. He went there to urinate in the river, fell in, case closed. No need for further investigation. They closed the case.
So, did they not do any further investigation after the body had been found in the river?
No, no forensic tests were carried out of him, of the scene of the recovery, or of his clothes, nothing at all. They even lost the evidence which we gave them, like CCTV cameras and other stuff. They lost them.
So, what steps did you take after the police have decided to close the case?
We hired a solicitor, and she was very good. And the only way to reopen the case was to make a complaint against them. And then it was decided that it was the Met police who messed it up. And then it was decided that Surrey police will take over the investigation. As soon as they heard that, Met started distributing some leaflets saying they never closed the case, that the investigation was live.
What did the court say in regards to what had the Met messed up in the case?
It's if I started, I would need a few days. Yeah.
Okay.
So all I can say to you is yes, it's a lot of mistakes were made. A lot of mistakes. Matt was heavily criticized. The chief officer was going to be disciplined, but decided to take early retirement. And there is a report of all the failings, which is kept under lock and key. I had to give a strict undertaking. My sister had to give a strict undertaking for the report to be released to me, quite a big report to be released to me. And I'm not allowed to talk about it. I'm not allowed to even talk about it to my husband or children, or I'm not allowed to show it to my husband and children or my lawyers. So that's where we are now, and we've been lobbying it for the report to be released to the public. But then my MP, Mr. John McDonough, used his parliamentary privilege and read parts of just a few parts of the report in the House of Commons, and is in the Hansard and is in my book. And I think if people really, really want to know the full story, because I have written it exactly the way things happened and how we were feeling and who was involved, is in the book. And the book is called Ricky Reel. Silence is not an option.
Surrey police did take over because obviously the Met had made so many mistakes. What did they conclude?
Nothing very much, because to me it was just more or less a paper exercise. They didn't investigate, they didn't interview Ricky's friends, and they didn't take statements from them. Sorry, they didn't ask them to do e-fits of the boys who were with him that night. There are loads of mistakes, loads and loads and loads of mistakes.
So they didn't even find the people that attacked them initially.
Well, if no investigation was taken place, then how they'll never find it. Like in other cases, yes, they have a chief officer, then they have other officers. There is a team, so the information is passed from the team to the head office, head officer. This did this didn't happen, but it was proved in court that all the information we have been passing it to him, and he denied that in court. But all the information that we did pass was produced in court. So he kept on saying he didn't know, whereas he didn't pay attention. It was there. He totally ignored it. The CCTV we handed to them, they destroyed it. Yeah. And my son has a in the new shirt he had a tear on his back. So more or less they said, no, we gave you the shirt, it's probably happened in your house. So really, really, I think it's important that people read the book. It highlights, tells the story, and people stand up and ask questions.
There was something that I did read in an interview that you did, that you found out that you were being spied on as well.
Yeah, yeah,
Can you
um,
explain a bit about that?
yeah. Um, when you ask too many questions, and I think there was this thing about, I mean, now it's different. 25 years ago, an Asian woman, a Sikh woman, did not stand up and ask questions of the institution,
Mm.
because
It's
that
going.
time the generation was too frightened to confront authorities.
And this is
Right?
why I asked the question initially, as you know, when you came here, what did you think of the racism? And that this was the reason. Is it because we're
Yeah,
told, just stay quiet, just carry on, carry on?
yeah,
But in this situation, you didn't. You actually
yeah,
raised your
yeah.
voice.
I answered your question in the book anyway, so read it. And so, 25 years ago, no woman stood up and confronted the authorities, and these are big authorities. But I did, simply because I wanted to know. I thought, I don't care what anybody else is saying. There were some, obviously, people saying, too scared, and saying, well, you're confronting it, you are a woman, and this and that. I said, it doesn't matter. I am going to stand up, but I'm going to stand up to get answers for my son, and mostly, any to make life better for members of our community. If in future when people or mothers go and parents go and report their children missing, they should be treated with dignity and respect. Yeah, and I am doing that for other people as well. So people's lives, and we have changed policies due to Ricky's investigation, due to our fight for justice. Missing persons guidelines have now been changed, so a missing person will not be judged on his age. It will be checked. It will be judged on the vulnerability. So that's a big, big change due to Ricky's case. And also in our case, no incident room was set up. Whereas if you see in all murder investigations, all crime investigations, there's always an incident room set up so that there is like a coordinated approach to the incident. In our case, it didn't happen. So now they've been told that it needs to be done. So, and then also in I had to give. I attended Stephen Lawrence inquiry.
Yep, I was just about to ask because obviously this isn't just the only racist case that is so highlighted. Stephen Lawrence was a massive case that all of us have heard.
Yeah. So remind me about the spying girl. I'll talk it in a few minutes, but
Yeah,
let me come back to Stephen Lawrence
yeah, of
inquiry.
course.
Mr. Lawrence had very early on invited me, so we are quite good friends, and we have spoken at each other's platforms. And on the first day of the inquiry, he invited me, and I went there. I've been attending the inquiry every day, and I saw what was coming after the inquiry was the same thing that happened to us, and the same mistakes that were happening in our case at that time. Even though they promised that they have learned the lessons, the same mistakes will not be repeated, but they were repeated in our case as well. And then they had. So I was sitting there, listening to all these mistakes being made by the police, and then when the inquiry ended, we were told to make a submission into the Stephen Lawrence inquiry, which we did through our solicitor. So the inquiry was heard. The second part of the inquiry was heard in different towns, and I gave my recommendations. I stood up and I spoke instead of the panel, and I gave my recommendations for the family liaison officers to be educated about culture, about religion, about different taboos, about how to be a person, a, not a robot.
A
The
human.
robot,
And this is
yeah,
what it comes down to. Just be human. It's not the color of your skin. It's not where you've
yeah,
come from.
yeah,
It's being human because you're a
yeah,
mother.
yeah. And then I was told that yes, that recommendations has been taken and it has made change to the policy, and that again is in my book, and is one of the panel members who's saying that. I'm not saying it; he's saying it.
And can I just say, just on that point, congratulations, because it's, everything you went through and you still had the courage to change policies and laws because of what you've gone through to help others. I mean, just credit to you. That's so admirable that you've done that.
I just, I have known pain, grief, and I am still in hell because there's no way out of this hell. And but I don't want other parents to go through this. So my message is very, very clear in the book. Do not face injustice. Stand up. Be a voice. I will be with you. Even though my own community, yeah, hasn't been with me, hasn't supported me very much. Yeah. And I am with you.
What
If
What do you
anybody
mean?
experience, if anybody does experience any problems, give me a call. I'll stand with you. And coming back to your question, I know what your question is. I had, I have been. to Stephen Lawrence's case, meetings, inquiries, and their own community, which is really admirable, has supported them. The inquiry had the hall was always packed with their community members. Others as well. I was there. I was watching that. Yeah. But where is my community with Ricky? Where are they? We have so many lords, ladies, or we have so many organizations. They have MBE or AR, whatever the letters are, with their names, is saying they are helping the community. Where are they?
Mm.
There are so many social gatherings where they have awards and other people getting together and saying, look, we are doing this for our community. We are doing this as a human, you know, humanity. We are helping humans. But why am I not in there?
Why do you think the community isn't supporting you? What do you think is holding people back from supporting?
I think my campaign is very political, and also that I have challenged the biggest institution in the country.
But Stephen Lawrence's case was also something very big as well. So, but why did their community support them, do you think?
That's a question I'm asking my community. Maybe they can answer me. I have written there some organizations who have all these big letters, after their names. I have written to them, and rather forget about the sport. They never even managed to send me an acknowledgement.
Mm.
I must admit some things that in the very early days, Northampton, there was a part organized by students in Northampton, all night part,
Mm.
and that was good. At least the community was there; they were doing something. And then some gurdwaras, with I'm talking about 97, 98. This is say, well, you can come and speak there, yeah, and just say inform people what is happening. But then lately, the press have been very, very active in highlighting my case. That's it. Why is our community so frightened? Why do they always sit behind closed doors? They go in, close the doors, and they think, well, it's not my problem.
And
I'm
do
not
you
going to
think
get.
it comes back to what we again started off with? We've been brought up in this situation where it's a keep your head down and carry on until, like you said, it actually knocks on your door and then you have to do something about it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think you got it. Yeah, that's what I think.
Okay. Now, just very in regards to the spine, because you did mention, I need to remind you of that. This is your reminder because that's
Okay.
quite a big thing, and that's something that I was like, oh, this is where
Yeah.
it gets.
Okay. So in 2014, I was called into the offices of John McDonnell. We had a letter, sorry, Suresh had a letter to say that the Hearn team, who is dealing with the spine, has some information for us. So we went there with Suresh and John McDonnell, my MP, in his office. And then they told me that my campaign has come under the radar of the police, and they called it simply collateral intrusion. Collateral intrusion, and I just looked at it. I said, "What the hell does it mean?"
Hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened to me. I thought I couldn't say, I couldn't breathe, and John had to send the police officers away in another room till I recovered. So we all were asking, "What is collateral intrusion?" And then somebody I remember saying spine. And then we had questions, and then we had meetings with the police, and we wanted to know why we were spied upon. And my campaign had really um, quite high profile people as well. We marched the streets with the likes of Michael Manson QC, Imran Khan QC, some actors, actresses, Suresh Grover, a human rights lawyer, another one who did the Guildford Four, uh, loads of lawyers. And we have been marching the streets with them, demanding for justice. And I think, with high profile people, they were sort of thinking, this is very big campaign. This is quite a high profile campaign as well. So I think they decided to spy on me. The reason was because I kept on speaking. I kept on highlighting the mistakes. I was highlighting all the mistakes that have been made in this case. So I became their enemy. So the spying took place. And then again, The spying had took place in 1997, right? So the ironic thing in there is on the within 8 hours of Ricky going missing, they told us that we are closing the case due to lack of resources. So what happened is that the resources were pulled from there and applied to spying.
Amazing. That is absolutely crazy to think of that.
But at the moment, so the 48 hours, at this point, they weren't looking for Ricky.
Nothing.
And so why did they
But they were
decide?
looking at you then. That's
They wanted to hear they wanted to know who I was speaking to, what I was saying, who was I meeting, where was I going, everything. Yeah. So this isn't like normal police officer. These are very high up police officers, and these are joined with MI5 as well,
But
right?
why did they? Because at this point, you weren't vocal because at this point, you were just looking and you wanted to find Ricky. Why do you think at
No,
this
I
point?
was vocal because I was speaking about it. I was speaking to everyone. When people were asking, why, I would say, well, I'm looking for it. But it wasn't that. It was people talking about it as well. Why aren't the police looking for your son? Why are you here? Why aren't you at home looking after your children? Which I should have been doing, but
Okay,
I couldn't do it because I had to look for my son. So at the time, in 97, when I should have been at home grieving for my Ricky, I was forced out on the streets. These people were spying. And then we found out that there are lots of other families spied upon, especially, I'm sure you have heard of women who were tricked into relationships by the SDS officers, and some of them had children as well. Yeah, so read under Spy Cops Inquiry, and you'll get a lot of information from there. We had meetings with the police officers who are dealing with spies, but not the people who spy, but the people in the office. So we had a few meetings, and yes, the reports are there. We demanded reports. They gave us reports which were heavily redacted, and I just returned it. I said, either give me full reports or nothing. And then this spying thing leaked out because of the women who had relationships with coppers, and Theresa May promised an inquiry, undercover police inquiry, which is still going on, and people who have been spied on have applied for as a co-participant, and I'm a co-participant in the inquiry, and the case is going to be heard in High Court. So then the judge, Sir John Mitting, has never met anyone. He's carrying out the inquiry, but he did not want to meet any co-participants. His only meetings are with the lawyers, but not people. So once again, I insisted um, that he listens to me. So, but they said he doesn't. So we carried on, and then I'm the first person who he decided to meet.
oh wow. Okay.
So I met him, told him what had happened, told him the damage that's caused to us. And he said to me that he's brought the report specially for me. So when he produced those reports, the reports were still redacted, and I refused to accept them. I said, no, I need the fruits to see what exactly were you doing to me. So after 18 months, he sent me about 10 reports. There are many more reports, and the reports I still had to give a strict undertaking so that I will not speak about the reports to anyone. I will not show my children these reports, and the reports are not very good reading.
So can I ask, has is this still going through the High Courts? Obviously, you can't reveal
Yeah,
too
it is.
much. It's still, and do you know when you might get some answers? Do you have a date that you'd be getting this information?
Our case should have been heard 2 years ago,
Okay.
but he keeps on postponing.
Okay.
So I don't know when it's going to be heard, but there are meetings. Even today, there were meetings with the lawyers, and it's been carrying on.
That is wow. And this is something, you see it on movies, you watch it in the cinema, but you're living a real life, spying. I mean, and again, you're talking about the highest authorities in this country. You're
Yeah,
living
I
that
got
life
that.
and you're
Yeah,
challenging it, which is
I was the first person to meet the high from the all the. I think there are about 250 people who are on the co-participants, and he didn't want to meet anyone, but I was the first person he met, and then I was the first person to get the report from the inquiry because I persisted, and then in the second phase of the McPherson inquiry, I went there. Even I made submission, and there was a panel listening to everyone. And then I said I wanted to speak because I made a submission, and I was told that I can't speak because the inquest was still pending. And the hall was full of people, was full of journalists. And I was talking to Suresh. I got a bit angry. I told Suresh, I said, well, fine, if the judge's not going to hear me, I said, here's a table. I'm going to stand on the table and start telling my story.
Oh, and did you do that just out of interest?
You
Oh,
did?
wow, you did.
No, no,
You didn't.
Do you know what? From talking to you, I wouldn't be surprised if you had done that, to be fair.
no, I was on the point of climbing on the table. I was on the point of climbing on the table, but when the journalist heard that, and the whole thing spread everywhere in the room.
You're a lady after my own heart.
I'm going to stand on the table. And I quickly called for a recess, for a break. They came back within 5 minutes. And they said, Mrs. Reed.
Before Sukhdev got on the table, they were like, we need a bit of lunch before we do this.
And they said, all right, you can speak. And it's funny because the panel member, Dr. Richard Stone, was with Sir Macpherson. And he was on the panel. And he's, written about this incident in the book.
Oh, wow.
What had happened? He didn't mention the table because I have mentioned it in the book. And he says, I first met Mrs. Reel during the public hearings of the Stephen Lawrence inquiry. She was one of the faces which were there, scrutinizing us every day that we appeared in public. As a matter of courtesy, I introduced myself during coffee breaks to most of the people who were regular attenders. I was asked by my colleague who it was that I was sitting there listening to for so long, and I explained how Mrs. Reel was the mother of Ricky we had read about in the newspapers, and who was convinced that her son has been murdered, even though Kingston police insisted that it was just an accident, and it was Ricky's own fault. Yeah. And then he said he told the judge about it. Yeah. And when I said about standing on the table, then he said it somehow happened, as many of you may know, that Mrs. Reel did get the opportunity to be a witness to the Lawrence inquiry. And he also said, the judge said, oh, she's with Suresh Grover because he's very vocal like me as well. So what are we going to do? And this panel member said, I'm sure she'll behave properly because after the incident with the table, he said, no, she'll behave properly.
That's how he
And
remembers you, the table incident.
yeah. And then the judge said, as we left the building at the inquiry that day, the judge said, these families, they have, because I told you what had happened, they have suffered deeply from failures of the police. That's a high court judge saying it, yeah? And that sort of comment from a lawyer trained to keep emotions separate from the intellectual approach to legal cases was, in my view, quite a triumph for Mrs. Reel.
Yeah.
That's it. So this is a book. I think people need to read it.
As we come to the end of the podcast, firstly, I'm going to repeat, I think you are a woman after my own heart with how much you've been through. And
let's go marching on the streets then.
No,
well,
such a strong person.
You don't come across many people that have gone as far as you have and to help others. But as we come to the end of this podcast, what would you say to others who perhaps haven't gone, haven't had that tragedy that you have had, but are facing racism, whether it's, minor racism, major racism, or further up like you have on such a massive level? What advice would you give them?
I think racism is ugly. Racism destroys people. And if you need to challenge it, you have every right to challenge it. And if you don't challenge it, the racists are going to get bolder. And the name calling will turn into murder. So you have to challenge it. But if you can't challenge it yourself, make sure you talk to someone, get some support, and sort it out. Because I can give you one example. I went out with my mum. My mum's had severe arthritis in her legs. She could not walk, and she was leaning on me. And I saw a couple of boys fighting, and they had their elbow around somebody's neck, and that boy was choking. Right, a split decision. Where do I put my mum? There wasn't
Yes.
any place to put my mum. So I told her to lean on the wall and hold on to the wall.
Yeah.
Your mum was like, "I'll go. This is where Sukhdev goes again." Superhero.
Mom couldn't walk because she was leaning on me to walk.
Yeah.
So I put her on the wall. I said, hold on to the wall. Don't let go of the wall. So I ran over, shouted, I ran over to the boys, right? And I said, and in my hand, there was the phone, on to the police saying, this is what's happening, this street. So they got away. At least, managed to save someone. So I wish somebody had taken that approach with my son as well.
Mm.
I continue to do that. It's not this is just one mention. I go out and I see people crying out for racism for other reasons as well. I went for a walk in the park. There was this lady sobbing her heart out. I sat down with her and I said, what is the problem? She talked to me. She was suffering domestic violence from her husband. I phoned all the agencies where she could be sent to. She went.
Mm.
So people, please don't turn your faces away from people who are suffering. It could be your turn, or hopefully not, but the same problem could hit you, and then where will you go? You will always find me by your side. But where are you? Why are you not on my side now? Why are you not supporting me?
Yeah.
Make me stronger so I can fight for you.
And Sukhdev, can you give us the name of your book? Because this is something that, like you said, everyone does need to read to see how much you have been through and to understand the background behind it as well.
It's called Ricky Reel. Silence is not an option. The reason, a couple of journalists have asked me, why have you chosen such a strong cover, such a strong title for your book? And the story is that I have been vocal for the last 25 years. I have never been silent. And I'm not going to be silent until I get justice. And the message is for all the listeners out there. The title of the book speaks for itself. Don't be silent. Face problems. Face any problems that you have with courage. You are not alone. There are people out there who can help you. People can have my email address. I don't have a problem with that. I have given my email address to people. You have a problem? Write to me. I'll see what I can do to help. I will stand with you. And I wish my message goes to all the authorities who are there, or the organizations who are there to help people like me to wake up and open their doors. You have left this mother alone for the last 25 years, trolling the streets on her own. So now is the time to open your eyes and help me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sukhdev. That's goodbye from me.
And goodbye from me.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, changing_suits, and subscribe so you never miss an episode.